Hello and welcome to Gazette discussion for 9 June 2021. My name is Harsh Singh, and in this edition we shall discuss all the articles that we have covered in the Gazette today. The first and foremost article for today is the featured news on sustainable public procurement. In this article we will understand what is the public procurement policy of the government, what is the meaning of sustainable public procurement, and then we will understand the need for this policy in India and what are the various initiatives government has taken in this same regard. This day in history is about Birsa Munda, who passed away on the same day, 9th June, and we will have a short discussion on his life. News snapshots. The three important news that we have covered today are: first, electoral reforms that have been proposed by Election Commission in front of the Law Ministry. The second one is on inclusive education that helps e-content development for the children with disabilities, Divyangjan. The third article is on India's inclusion in United Nations ECOSOC. Image of the day relates to Kempegoda International Airport and the developments there. Terms and concepts, all of them have been in news. The first one is non-tax revenue. The second one is content delivery network that has caused some issues in the international networking online. And the third is Pandav Leni complex near Nasik. Editorials of the day. Today we have covered two editorials. The first one is on extradition treaty and the issues with it. The second one is on mental health issues. Case study of the day. It is about an officer in the Indian Forest Service. Yes, Sanjeev Chaturdevedi. Let's begin. The featured news and the first article for today is on sustainable public procurement. It is in news because the government has introduced a new article, Green Room Air Conditioner, in its website for public procurement, GEM Government e-Marketplace. Hence, in this article, we will understand what is the meaning of sustainable public procurement and what is the usual policy through which the government purchases its items. Then we will understand what is the need for sustainable public procurement and the threats to the same. But before that, we must understand what is government e-marketplace. Now, as the name suggests, it is a market. It is a market from which the government purchases its items. It has been made online. The reason for making it online is very simple. Online system makes it transparent. It makes it more efficient. The whole system becomes cashless, and therefore there is a lot of efficiency in the system. It is also economizing. It saves a lot of finances for the government. Through e-marketplace, government can also list products. It can list particular products. For example, it can list sustainable products for government to purchase. See, we must understand the government makes a lot of purchases. If it makes purchases in a certain month and then later at certain month and then later, it is not spend management. If we can purchase all the items through contract at one time, it makes the whole process economical for the government, right? So it can result in as much as 10 to 15 to 20% of savings for the government, and I'm talking to the tunes of around procurement of 20% of GDP. This is the level to which the government procures items. 20% of GDP is used for government purchases, union government, state government, and other departments included, right? And therefore the government has put in this GEM, government e-marketplace. Now coming down to sustainable public procurement, right? Imagine one has purchased a fridge. What do we see? We see the energy ratings, the star ratings. If it is 4-5 star rating, all right, it is efficient, we can purchase it. But is it actually sustainable? Let's see. What happens to the fridge after its life is over? Are we able to use the chipsets, or are we able to recycle it? What happens to its plastic body? Is it able to decompose, or are we able to recycle? Now, this is what can make an item actually sustainable or not. For example, earlier we have been using linear model of production. We take a raw material, make a product, and then after it is out of use, we call it a waste product. However, in circular model of economy, we reuse the product, we recycle it, we regenerate it, right? Look at this: recycling, production, distribution, consumption, and reuse, repair, and recycle, right? So this is what is a sustainable mode of production, right? And this can be used for sustainable procurement also, right? In the longer run, it will be good for the society, government, and economy, everything, right? And this is why government has now introduced a sustainable air conditioner, right? A green room air conditioner. Okay, this air conditioner will have facilities like more energy efficiency, easier cleaning mechanism, right? Optimal size, the thermostat which can regulate the temperature, it gets shut off when the sustainable temperature is achieved, right? So this is what is the item which has been put in the government e-marketplace for now, right? Now this is also a part of SDG, Sustainable Development Goal number 12, right? So sustainable development goal also gets filled through such sustainable production and consumption, right? Because government is spending as much as 15 to 20%, the productions and the procurement must be sustainable in nature, of sustainable items as well. It will help the climate, right? It will help in circular economy, right? There'll be resource efficiency. We will be using those resources which are more efficient, right? And it will also be socially and ethically responsible. Why? Because if we are procuring from, see, this is a matter of public policy. Let's discuss that part first. Now, the government has introduced a policy by which preferences will be given to goods with 50% plus local content. For example, if value addition to a product is more than 50% for the local products, right? A value addition of more than 50% has happened at the local level in India, then the government prefers those products on its GEM portal, right? So it has classified products in three categories: class 1, class 2, and non-local suppliers. For example, in class 1, it will include those products in which local value addition is more than 50%. Class 2 for 20 to 50% local value addition, and then non-local suppliers. So therefore, preference is given to those suppliers which have manufactured items locally or there is more value addition. What does it lead to? It leads to self-reliant India. Self-reliant India, right? Okay. Now, this is the public procurement policy. So it also helps our social and ethical procuring policies in the governance, because this is how we introduce good norms for procurement. For example, we help the rural Indians, right? Example, bamboo products put in, this was covered in our Gazette discussion as well. Bamboo products being put in GEM portal, right? So this will help the rural artisans and manufacturers also. So what has been done in India in this regard? Now, there has been a task force which has been designated to review the best practices around the world, to inventorize. That means all the items, good items, sustainable items will be put in this inventory, and there'll be an action plan prepared to recommend what all items can be put on the GEM, Government E-Market portal. Okay. Moving ahead. Now, we must understand that there are various aspects to procurement. For example, for it to be made sustainable, it has to stand at the three pillars of sustainable economy. For example, environment must be respected, equity must be maintained, and economy must also get profit from it. And that is how this sustainability chain is maintained. Now, the government has to deal with it in a very smart manner. For example, it must release a policy on what is sustainable. Sustainable does not only mean having Energy Star ratings. It means something that the whole circular economy is able to utilize it, right? So this definition, if forwarded to the industry, will make it standard, and that is how all the industries will come into play to make the product a more efficient one, right? So a standard definition for sustainable must be introduced, and then government must legalize the procurement network. What items can be put in the government e-market portal, and therefore this will help suppliers and purchasers in a legal manner. They will be able to go ahead, and even the market will be able to understand what is the preference of the government, right? What is the list of prioritized products, right, according to these standards. For example, spend analysis, risk mitigation, right, national context, what is important for the country. So these are some important fodder points inside the prioritized products. Okay. And what is required is to build a special institute to oversee all the progress and build capacity, help people train, right? Now, there is a SWOT analysis done for this sustainable public procurement, right? The strength of it is that since the government has a lot of budget for it, therefore it helps the country grow. There'll be a vibrant domestic market if we introduce such a policy, right? There are opportunities. For example, the consumption here will be very good. There'll be healthy competition among the market players, right? The government will lead by example by introducing the sustainable products in its website, right? And Make in India will be prospered. However, there are certain weaknesses and threats as well. For example, in India, the capacity for production of sustainable items is not as much. We don't have that technology. We are not in that zone to to produce the sustainable products at that level. Right now, there are supply side constraints as well. If there is a huge demand, are we able to scale the supply? Not sure. Ecomark is another thing. Now see, this is the Ecomark scheme, the BIS, introduced in 1991, right? Ecomark is put on those products which are ecologically very good. However, are we aware of it? No, right? So we need to popularize these things so that there is an increased awareness of procurement of such items, right? There's another threat. The companies should not be greenwashing. Greenwashing means companies are using the name that they are using ecological products. However, it is only namesake, right? Therefore, to understand this in totality, one must understand that the procurement of government is at very, very humongous levels. For example, in developed countries, it is 12 to 15%. However, in developing countries, it is as much as 30%. So government must utilize this money to procure sustainable items, right? This is what the article is about. So let us quickly revise this article. We have understood what is the meaning of sustainable public procurement, right? The whole circular economy rather than linear must be followed. So please write down this particular keyword: linear model and circular model. We had covered circular economy on 27th May Gazette. Then please note down One Planet Network. This is the organization which coordinates such kind of SDG 11, SDG 12 goals, right? Okay, go ahead. Note down the level of public procurement. This is important. 15 to 20%. Resource efficiency. These are the keywords. Socially and ethically responsible. Please note down these keywords. Go ahead and note down that the government must introduce a definition, a standard definition for sustainable for the whole economy, right? Then list of prioritized products, and please write down these fodder points, very important, because these points will fetch you marks. For example, national context, spend analysis, risk mitigation, market readings, influence, right? Okay, you should also note down some of the strength and weaknesses. For example, public budget, vibrant market, the competition, healthy competition, lead by example, supply side constraints, Ecomark scheme, greenwash. These are some very good keywords that one can use in the answer writing, right? And of course, we have to develop our answer on the basis of 3 pillars of sustainable development. And after this, after noting down this, try attempting this question: what is sustainable public procurement? Analyze the factors to be considered while making sustainable public procurement policy in India. Also, do note down the public procurement policy. This is very important. This will help you to write credible answers in the examination. All right, moving ahead. This day in history is the day Birsa Munda, an important tribal leader in the state of Jharkhand, he passed away. He died on 9 June 1900. He was important in the history of erstwhile Bihar because he also initiated an Ulugan, a revolution against the Britishers. During those times in 19th century, there were important players in that tribal region. First was the Munda and Orao tribals. They were the traditional cultivators. They were also called as Khutkatikars. However, slowly and steadily, merchants and money lenders started to have role in those areas, and they came to be known as Jagidars and Tikidars. Right. So there was a tussle between the original Khutkatikars and the money lenders. And later on, Britishers also started to participate. In fact, they started to support the merchants and money lenders in some or the other way. Now, during that time, there was also an issue of conversion of the tribals into Christianity. So some tribals converted to Christianity and some converted to Hinduism. And therefore, there was religious segregation. Because of this, certain elements started Sardari movement, who will be the Sardar of the land. And hence, these Christian tribals, they became the spearheaders of revolt against the merchants. They didn't want the merchants to have the hold over their own land, right? So there was one conflict called the Sardari movement. However, Birsa Munda had a conflict with the Britishers also. He did not want Dikus. What is the word Diku? Diku means outsider. right, in their language. So he did not want any outsider to be involved in their own land, and therefore his fight was his Ulugun. His revolution was against the Britishers, right? Although he passed away later, Britishers passed the CNT Act, Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act, by which they give certain rights to the locals, and they ended Bethbegari, that means forced labor in the region. This day in history, important man in the tribal history of India, Birsa Munda. The first snapshot of the day is on Election Commission of India and the electoral reforms it is trying to introduce with the help of Law Ministry. The first reform that it is asking for is on voter registration. As of now, people who have turned 18 years of age can on 1st January can only be registered as voters. However, the issue here is that if a person is born on Jan 2, will they be registered on the same year? No, they will have to register with the Election Commission of India the next year, and they will miss out on the complete election process, electing their representative for one complete year. And therefore, ECI proposes that there be 4 times in the year when a new elector can be registered. What will it do? It will increase the number of electors. There'll be greater participation, especially considering India is a young country. This is a very important reform. Good one. Second one, filing of false affidavits. Now, all the people who are participating in elections, they have to file an affidavit. That is a self-declaration on themselves and the family about what are their assets, what are their liabilities, what is their educational standard, what is their earning, right? All these things. Now, if a person files affidavit and they put in wrong information, Election Commission says there must be more penalty. The penalty right now is 6 months of imprisonment. The Election Commission proposes 2 years of imprisonment. How it is important? Now, Supreme Court had given a judgment where it said that if a person is imprisoned for 6 years, a person elector, they will be disqualified for standing in elections and for 6 years after the punishment gets over. So this is a very significant reform if introduced. The third is on paid news, right? Now, news is good, but if one pays for news which is not correct, which is false, this is wrong. And right now it is not an electoral offense. Paid news misguides people, the innocent viewers. There is an extra expenditure done by an organization for paid news. This could be in violation to talk tax norms. It could be in violation to electoral norms as well. So therefore, to influence voters in a wrong way, the Election Commission proposes penalty. It wants to make paid news as an offense, right? Okay, next, advertisements during silence period. Now, silence period is the time between the advertisements and the day of election, right? There is a stipulated period of 48 hours before elections when their silence period is observed. This is the time when the elector is given time to have free mind and to vote without any influence. However, the silence period is observed only for the electronic media and not for the print media. In newspapers, an organization can have their advertisements, and this is where the Election Commission says, okay, let us introduce silence period for everybody, right? For all type of media. Fifth, linking of Aadhaar to voter roll. The most advantageous thing about this is that it will clean the voter roll. It will authenticate all the people. There are many voters who are registered but they don't exist. They could be fake IDs. If you link them to Aadhaar card, because Aadhaar is also bio verified, right? Photograph, fingerprint, iris scan. So therefore it will authenticate the voter list, and therefore it makes everything very streamlined. So these are the reforms which have been proposed by Election Commission in front of the Law Ministry. Next snapshot. The second snapshot is on e-content development for children with disabilities. Now, imagine these times of Corona when students are at their homes, the schools are closed, students are studying online from their homes. What happens to these students who are blind, who are hearing impaired? They will be marginalized because there is hardly any content to read and to listen to at their homes, and therefore they'll be excluded out of this system of education. And that is why the education minister has approved a set of guidelines on the basis of which e-content will be developed for children with disabilities. India has around 2 to 2.5, 3% of Divyangjan, people with disabilities, and 55% of them are illiterate. They are not educated. And therefore, to prosper this philosophy of inclusive education, e-content must be developed on these lines. For example, there must be radio for the visually impaired. There must be digitally accessible textbooks, right? There must be QR code enabled textbooks for all the classes on the Diksha portal, right? The four principles on which this inclusive education must work is it must be perceivable. One must be able to use senses to perceive it. It must be operable. One must be able to operate through the app or the textbook, digital textbook. It must be understandable in the local language. It must be accessible. For example, although the content is in local language or audio format, however, if the app does not support, if the app needs a person to visually see and click there, will it work? No. It must be accessible, right? So these are the four important guidelines on the basis of which the e-content must be prepared, right? Now, India is a participant of the UNICEF's Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and therefore government is liable to take actions on the same, right? For flexible system of education and inclusivity in education, especially for the vulnerable and marginalized sections, right? So we must understand what is Diksha portal. Now, Diksha stands for Digital Infrastructure for Knowledge Sharing. Now, this is an ed tech education tech app of the government. It is also a portal where the teacher can educate themselves, can have their career plan. This is a portal where the teacher, students, parents, all the stakeholders, they can interact with each other. This is also a place where all the educational content is placed online. The idea right now is to have all the content inclusive. Inclusive means in such format that all kind of educators are able to view and understand it. It is an initiative of Ministry of Education. Similarly, PM e-Vigyan Vidya program, right? The main aim of it is to have one nation, one digital platform, right? Through this, they are trying to build inclusive education society. Similarly, we have Swayam Prabha, right? Direct to home. Now, this is the channel through which a lot of TV telecasts are done and transmitted to home to students, an initiative of Ministry of Human Resources Development, right? So in this article, please note down these four principles, very important, four principles for inclusive education, right? Important. Note down certain keywords like accessible digital keyboards, Divyangjan proportion in India, 55% only being literate, and note down the examples of Diksha portal and eVidya Swayam Prabha. Third snapshot is on India's election to United Nations ECOSOC, Economic and Social Council, for the term of 3 years, 2022, 23, 24. Good news for India, because India has been elected from the Asia Pacific states, including Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Oman. And this is how the representation of world happens region wise. India is already a member, a non-permanent member, right now a non-permanent member in the United Nations Security Council for the term 2021 to 22, 2 years, right? Now, this goes through geographical representation of all the areas, and United Nation ECOSOC is one of the six principal organs. The other organs are General Assembly, where all the nations represent themselves, Security Council, important from the security perspective, Secretariat, which runs the United Nations altogether, International Court of Justice to resolve disputes between member states, Trusteeship Council to ensure that all the territories which were the trustees are governed with the principle of inclusivity for the original inhabitants of the place, right? During the times of 50 years back. And Economic and Social Council, what is their work? Their work is to coordinate all the economic and social initiatives of United Nations. For example, there are specialized agencies like UNESCO, UNICEF, WHO, World Food Program, etc. They are consultative NGOs, right? They are part of the whole setup. And Economic and Social Council coordinates their activities, gives them objectives to work on, notes down their development, provides funds. They are observable organizations, for example, World Bank. Now, these all have their representation in Economic and Social Council, and Social and Economic Council participates through coordination and organization of the activities, right, in all the specialized agencies, right? Now, the functions of it are to convene meetings, to follow up and review the development, to coordinate activities between specialized agencies, to make recommendations to General Assembly, right? So these are the important activities of this council. Image of the day is about Kia. Kempegowda International Airport, Bengaluru. It has achieved the status of energy neutrality. That means 98%, as much as 98% of its energy sources are renewable. It has applied solar energy to power the whole institution, and therefore it has achieved an accreditation from Airport Council International. Delhi Airport also achieved this status, and therefore Delhi is another airport which is energy neutral. It utilizes all its energy from solar sources employed at the airport. This is a very good feat for the airports in India. Terms and concept. The first term and concept in news is the non-tax revenue. Government for its day-to-day functioning needs money. That means it has to collect resources and money. The two ways it can collect is through tax and non-tax. Tax are indirect and direct taxes that it deploys, and non-tax sources do also exist. For example, if government is an equity shareholder in some organization, it receives dividends. If it is owner of certain organization, for example PSUs, it receives profits. It also receives interests on the loans it has forwarded, for example loans to states, for to union territories, railways, other organizations, etc. And it also gets fees. For example, the UPSC exam that we uh, participate in, the exam fees there, power supply fees, licensing, right? So these are the various kind of non-tax revenue for the government. The news is that the dividend or surplus transfer from RBI, it has become one of the biggest sources for non-tax revenue. The second term and concept in news is content delivery network. During these times of networking online, people are based at various corners of the world and they receive and transmit information. However, a lot of information is kept at servers. For example, let us assume that Delhi has server and it has information regarding UPSC, and people at New York are trying to get the information about UPSC. However, it will take a while for the information from Delhi to get transmitted and the page to upload at New York. And therefore, there are intermediate servers. For example, UK could have an intermediate server having certain important data about UPSC, certain important data which can be released and uploaded quickly at New York. And these are called as intermediate servers. This placing of server will minimize the delay. They will also have data centers which will keep important data for critical usage, for important usage which are required often, right? These data centers can be placed at many, and proxy servers can be placed at many parts of the world for reducing the delay, right? It is in news because there has been a major outage, an issue. The whole website of a lot of companies, Amazon, Twitter, CNN, etc., they were down because fastly an organization, a cloud computing organization, had some issue in the content delivery network. Next term and concept is Pandavleni complex. What is it? Now it is a complex of Buddhist caves near Nasik, right? They are also known as Nasik caves. It is under ASI, Archaeological Survey of India. The caves were formed, constructed during the old times of 2nd century BC to 6th century AD, and these caves largely contain viharas, the places where Buddhist monk would live, and some chaitya as well. Now, these are the worship halls. Important Buddhist structures during those times were viharas, places where monks would live, chaitya, where they would worship, and the stupas, which were the places where relics of important Buddhist people would be kept. Right now, the caves here have verandas. You can see the verandas in this image, right? Verandas and places, platforms where the monks could ease and sit for meditation, right? The other caves in the region in Maharashtra are Karla, Bhaja, etc. Editorials of the day. The first editorial for today is about extradition treaty and the issues, the legal hurdles involved in it. Mehul Choksi, one of the promoters of Gitanjali Jewelers, has been found to illegally enter one of the Caribbean countries, Dominica. He has also become a citizen of Antigua, another country in the Caribbean islands. He's trying to evade the possible prosecution in India for money laundering and other economic offenses. Right now, India has had extradition treaties with various countries, but extradition of Mehul Choksi is under some issues because India does not have extradition treaty with certain countries, for example, Dominica. On the other hand, Dominica is saying that extradition is another issue. This person has illegally entered India, and that is why we will continue the legal proceedings against him. Right. So people like Vijay Mallya, Nirav Modi, and Mehul Choksi, they have found out ways and means to exploit the gaps in the extradition treaty. And this is why this article is in news. Click here to read the editorial. Moving ahead, the second editorial is about mental health strategy in India. Most of the countries which are developed spend as much as 5% of their health expenditure in mental health, but developing countries spend as minimum as 0.5% of their health expenditure in in mental health. That means 10 times less, 10 times less than the developed countries, right? So the idea in this article given is that the expenditure must increase. There must be institutions which can support this. Funds must be provided for mental health as well, right? There are a lot of problems like depression, being bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety. People are committing suicides, and most of them are not recorded because of the mental health issues, right? There is a increased tendency of suicides in males as compared to females. South India has more tendency for mental health issues than North India, for a lot of other reasons which are still under research, right? So the idea here is to have more awareness, participation of government and private sector in mental health sector. Case study for today is on an Indian Forest Service officer we see quite often in news, Sanjeev Chaturvedi. He's in news because he meets corruption head on by trying to expose the corruption at all the levels, especially at the highest level. He believes that if corruption is met at the highest level, people at lower levels will fear indulging in such activities. And due to this, he has also faced the brunt of the system. He has been charge sheeted a number of times. His promotions have been blocked, and he has been given a lot of punishment postings. Because of this, he has also been suspended a number of times, which was later intervened by the presidential intervention, something very rare for civil servant, right? He has also been investigated for various allegations by CBI, but every time he came clean because of his level of integrity. Later, he was also awarded Raymond Magsaysay Award. Right, this award is given to Asians and people outside Asia as well. In certain cases, Raymond Magsaysay was the Philippine president, and this award has come into being since 1957. It is given in these particular fields. However, six fields, these particular fields were abolished after 2008. Emergent leadership, this is what is the category under which awards are given now. He is Sanjeev Chaturvedi. Right. Now, when asked what kept him going, he said it is an inner motivation that he stayed true to his principles. He also said that his subordinates helped him during his tough times. Very important, the inner motivation that he stayed true to his principles. And this is where each of us, each of the students preparing for UPSC must have some set of principles. Whether they get through the exam or not this year or the next year, they must have those principles, and those principles must be followed, right? They will help them survive the tough times, just like Sanjeev did. All right. He also says that one must give their best, even if there is a punishment posting or a good one, they must give their best at all the places. Transfer is a part of the service of the person, and it's a duty. Professionalism and commitment are more important than what kind of transfers they are into, right? And if there is good intention in the best interest of the country, there is nothing that can stop them, right? There's a lot of dedication, probity, conscience that is seen in Sanjeev's attitude. And this is what we can derive out of this case study. Do note down the important elements of this case so that you can present them in conversations, in building positive spirit, and in answer writing. Thank you for listening.